There's a donation link in the description of this video, and you can join me on Patreon. Thanks for all the support I can get. Thanks for the likes and the thumbs up. And here's an example of a song from 1926. Give Me a Kiss. Will ya, huh? Okay, you can look it up on YouTube and listen to it. But it's a great example of a song that uses secondary dominants, actually in a couple different ways, you know, to add some spice and flavor and a little change of direction to the song rather than your standard chords, right? And it's super simple, right? Now, if you look here, I'm going to jump down to this third line. There's a C. C is the home chord, and G7 is the main dominant, the dominant 7 chord, right, of the key, right? It's right next to C on the circle, right, the key of C, and there's G, 5, 7. Okay, so if we keep going, right, we come into this E7 to an A minor. You feel how that lands? Like it's landing at a point of rest at a home, right? I get the E7, that injects a little spice and flavor into the chord progression, and then I land right back into my original key, right? It's like I'm landing on home again, right? So again, all you're doing is you take the A, right? I had an A minor, I look one clockwise and I got an E, right? I'm looking clockwise and I make that a 7th chord, right? So E7, right? And that goes in before my A minor. And I'm rocking with secondary dominants. Okay, so then we get an F and an A7 and a D minor. So there it is again, right? A7, which is outside the key of C, right? It's a secondary dominant of D, right? Which is right there next to it, right? They're buddies on the circle, right? So anywhere you see a couple of chords next to each other, you can make secondary dominants. They're so simple to create, right? And it keeps going, right? So then, I don't know, I don't play that chord very often. G7 sharp 5 to the home chord, right? And that goes back and forth a couple times. And then we got, let's look at this last line because they bring it on home with double dominant. I like to call this double dominant right there. And they just bring it on home to the end of the tune or the end of the verse, right? So you're starting out at the home chord C and then the main dominant G7. And then they go to this D7, right? Which is a secondary dominant of the dominant, which they go to next to the G7 and then back to the home chord, right? So you see how they did the stacking of the dominant 7 chord, the D7 to the G7 to the home chord, right? Bring it down home. So anyways, that's a way to experimentally use secondary dominants in your songwriting and just throw them in wherever and see how does that sound? Does it give me the vibe and the feel and the direction that I want in my tune? Now, let's say I had this beautiful A minor chord, right? Here we have the Magic Music decoder ring, right? And it unveils another level of the amazing things it can just give us the answer. In this case, secondary dominants. So we pick this A minor 7, right? And all we're gonna do is we're gonna go right next door to this E, and we're gonna make it a 7th chord. So here's A minor 7. We're gonna go to E, and we're gonna make that a 7th chord. Right, we're going to go out of key a little bit, but we're going to have a 7th chord, and then we go beautifully back to A minor 7, right? Do this with any chord. Say D minor, right, is your target chord you want to go to, that D minor 7, right? You say, okay, let me go right next door, make it a 7th chord, A7, going to D minor. All right, see how beautifully that flows? So you can inject these secondary dominants into your song. It's done in songwriting all the time. If you look at all the songs over the past number of decades, there's a lot of examples of people, they throw in a secondary dominant, or sometimes more than one, right? And it just adds some variety, some different flavor to your chord progression because you're kind of jumping out of key for just a second and then you come right back in, right, with a beautiful landing. Today I wanted to do another episode on the magical musical decoder ring and show how really it is magical and gives us the answer. And I want to talk about secondary dominance. Now, if you got your rainbow colors right, I've picked the key as C. My 1 is at C. So those are my available chords that are harmonious in the key of C. And I wanted to go to this A minor 7 right there, but I wanted a secondary dominant thrown in. What I would do, I just go right next door to this E and make it a 7th chord. Instant secondary dominant. It's going to have a beautiful pull back to this A. You can do this with any note, right?